place. Again, if to be satisfactory is what is meant by being true, whose satisfactions and which of his satisfactions at account? Discriminations notoriously have to be made, and the upshot is that only rational candidates and intellectual satisfactions stand the test. We are then driven to a purely theoretic notion of truth, and get out of the pragmatic atmosphere altogether, and with this Mr. Joseph leaves us. Truth is truth, and there is an end of the matter. But he makes a very pretty show of convicting me of self-stultification, in according to our purely theoretic satisfactions any place in the humanistic scheme. They crowd the collateral satisfactions out of house and home, he thinks, and pragmatism has to go into bankruptcy if she recognises them at all. There is no room for disagreement about the facts here, but the destructive force of the reasoning disappears as soon as we talk concretely instead of abstractly, and ask, in our quality of good pragmatists, just what the famous theoretic needs are known as, and in what the intellectual satisfactions consist. Mr. Joseph, faithful to the habits of his party, makes no attempt at characterising them, but assumes that their nature is self-evident to all. Are they not all mere matters of consistency, and emphatically not of consistency between an absolute reality and the mind's copies of it, but of actually felt consistency amongst judgments, objects, and manners of reacting in the mind? And are not both our need of such consistency and our pleasure in it conceivable as outcomes of the natural fact that we are beings that develop mental habits, habit itself proving adaptively beneficial in an environment where the same objects or the same kinds of objects recur and follow law? If this were so, what would have come first would have been the collateral profits of habit, and the theoretic life would have grown up in aid of these. In point of fact, this seems to have been the probable case. At life's origin, any present perception may have been true, if such a word could then be applicable. Later, when reactions became organised, the reactions became true whenever the expectation was fulfilled by them. Otherwise they were false or mistaken reactions. But the same class of objects needs the same kind of reaction, so the impulse to react consistently must gradually have been established, with a disappointment felt whenever the results frustrated expectation. Here is a perfectly plausible germ for all our higher consistencies. Nowadays, if an object claims from us a reaction of the kind habitually accorded only to the opposite class of objects, our mental machinery refuses to run smoothly. The situation is intellectually unsatisfactory. To gain relief, we seek either to preserve the reaction by reinterpreting the object, or, leaving the object as it is, we react in a way contrary to the way claimed of us. Neither solution is easy. Such a situation might be that of Mr. Joseph, with me claiming assent to humanism from him. He cannot apperceive it so as to permit him to gratify my claim, but there is enough appeal in the claim to induce him to write a whole article in justification of his refusal. If he should assent to humanism, on the other hand, that would drag after it an unwelcome, yea, incredible, alteration of his previous mental beliefs. Whichever alternative he might adopt, however, a new equilibrium of intellectual consistency would in the end be reached. He would feel, whichever way he decided, that he was now thinking truly. But if, with his old habits unaltered, he should simply add them to the new one of advocating humanism quietly or noisily, his mind would be rent into two systems, each of which would accuse the other of falsehood. The resultant situation, being profoundly unsatisfactory, would also be unstable. Theoretic truth is thus no relation between our mind and archetypal reality. It falls within the mind, being the accord of some of its processes and objects with other processes and objects, accord consisting here in well-definable relations. So long as the satisfaction of feeling such an accord is denied us, whatever collateral profits may seem to inure from what we believe in are but as dust in the balance, provided always that we are highly organised intellectually, which the majority of us are not. The amount of accord which satisfies most men and women is merely the absence of violent clash between their usual thoughts and statements and the limited sphere of sense perceptions in which their lives are cast. The theoretic truth that most of us think we ought to attain to is thus the possession of a set of predicates that do not contradict their subjects. We preserve it as often as not by leaving other predicates and subjects out. In some men theory is a passion, just as music in others. The form of inner consistency is pursued far beyond the line at which collateral profits stop. Such men systemize and classify and schematize and make synoptical tables and invent ideal objects for the pure love of unifying. Too often the results, glowing with truth for the inventors, seem pathetically personal and artificial to bystanders, which is as much as to say that the purely theoretical criterion of truth can leave us in the lurch as easily as any other criterion. I think that if Mr. Joseph will but consider all these things a little more concretely, he may find that the humanistic scheme and the notion of theoretic truth fall into line consistently enough to yield him also intellectual satisfaction. End of chapter 11.